Hello, and welcome to today's main event, Language Inclusivity at Eventbrite. My name is Tucker Johnson, and I will be hosting this discussion today. Over half of the world's population, or over half of the world's most commonly spoken languages have gendered grammar. This presents unique challenges for localizers who want to be conscious of how they address gender dynamics in their content. Language matters, it always has. And when there is a major shift in language usage, it is often related to social climate, scientific discovery, or technological advancement. Today, we discuss how language shapes the world we live in and the potential for language to disrupt or reinforce gender norms in society. Today's event is part of a larger series that we are hosting here at Nimdzi Insights, where we talk to industry leaders about the latest research and trends and developments in global business and localization. We have a number of events already on the calendar, and we actually have some past events as well that you can check out. The recordings are all available either on Nimdzi Insights LinkedIn page or on our YouTube page. We're hosting this event as a live event on LinkedIn. So if you're joining us live, then we encourage you to engage directly with us in the comments, and we will respond to any questions or insights from the chat when I bring the chat up on screen right here. Today's featured research from Nimdzi Insights is our Lessons in Localization Series, which highlights the localization programs and the globalization programs at global companies around the world. We have over 65 currently published Lessons in Localization Series. If you'd like more information about how to get access to those, you can reach out to us at info@nimdzi.com, and let's talk about that. We also have a featured case study today on the topic of diversity and inclusion, and this is for a gaming company that wanted to understand what does diversity and inclusion and inclusivity mean across cultures. As we're going to probably discuss today, it doesn't always mean the same thing as us in our US-centric bubble here. So make sure you can go check out that case study at nimdzi.com/testimonials and find that case studies. We have a whole bunch of other resources that I'm going to be putting into the comments here on LinkedIn when I have a chance once we get started. So stay tuned and I'll get you those links. Getting into today's topic, I am joined by my colleague today, Nikoli Potgieter from, and I screw up that pronunciation every time, from South Africa, who's going to be helping facilitate the conversation today. And while her and I are going to be facilitating the conversation, we certainly are not the main event. We have the good fortune to have Veronica DiMartino from Eventbrite with us, who's going to be telling us about what she's working on over there. A little bit about you. Let me give a stab at the introduction. Veronica is a senior localization program manager at Eventbrite with a successful experience building and managing various multilingual programs from the ground up. She has extensive experience coordinating global teams to produce high-quality deliverables. Veronica is going to be walking through with us today a real case study on how Eventbrite is using language as a tool to improve inclusivity, and I'm very excited to hear what she has to say. Ladies, welcome to the show. Nikoli, anything to add to your introduction?
No. We'll work on the surname though. It's Potgieter, but well done. And I'm a growth consultant with Nimdzi, so excited to have this conversation with Veronica today.
Welcome, Veronica.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. Tell us a little bit more about what you do over at Eventbrite.
So I'm a senior program manager in the localization function, and we basically manage the whole localization and translation process of Eventbrite across many different domains and markets.
And you have today, we have a special treat, and you make my job really easy because you've provided us a lovely presentation to go through today. And tell us a little bit about the initiative. Before we get into the presentation, tell us a little bit about the initiative, and we can go through the agenda after that. How did you get involved with inclusivity as a passion, as a focus area, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, so it's a topic that's very dear to my heart, personally and professionally. I am a big fan of anything that is multicultural. I love just like soaking myself into, like different life experiences from all sort of like walk of lives and identities. I think it's such an enriching life experience to, having the opportunity to share just different life perspectives from people that are, from all different walks of lives. And it's something that cultural sensitivity is something that I practice in my day-to-day life every day. And so it was something that I wanted to like bring in my everyday work life as well. So I guess for me, inclusivity and like multicultural, multilingual are all aspects that are at the core of localization. So I thought, this is just it's just the natural state of things. So I like united the two things, the personal and the professional passions together.
And there's a lot of overlap between the work that we do, and I think we take this for granted in the language industry. The work that we do is about inclusivity. It's about including people from around the world, regardless of what language they speak. So it's a nice step, and it's a very easy step to take from going from a language access to inclusivity, diversity, inclusion. Perspective, and it's something that a lot of our clients get roped into, because inclusivity and these other, diversity, inclusion, let's just say, doesn't necessarily mean the same thing across different cultures. There's a way to localize these different concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I also think that just by nature, as usually like localization teams they are the heart of diversity of companies. Usually localization teams is where you find people from all over the world, from all sorts of like cultures, walks of lives. So I think also like at our core, the nature of localization, not only as what we do but also as who we are, we really represent that cause very well, I think.
To the point where, like I said, we take it for granted. Like we forget about it. Like sometimes I look around myself, like my team, and like I'm the minority American. I'm the token American on my team, and it's like, what other department, what other industry do you have that as an American? That's exciting for me, right? Because a lot of Americans, we can live our entire life without being even exposed to other cultures. For a number of reasons that I won't get into right now, but let's get into your presentation. I'm excited to see what you have for us today. On the agenda, you've broken it up into several different topics here. We have multilingual Eventbrite, the challenge, the language switch, the results, and the future moving forward. So let's get into multilingual Eventbrite. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on over there.
Sure. So I'll start with our mission statement, which in our team is our mission is to delight our users worldwide with a high quality localized experience through globally accessible content and meaningful product market fits. And I want to draw your attention especially on the word accessible here. Accessibility, as we know, it's a hot topic right now everywhere in the tech industry. And as Eventbrite starts to implement new ways of making our product more accessible, like for me, it was just natural that a language in itself should be considered as an integral part of making sure that Eventbrite services and products are accessible all over the world, basically. And so to me, like localization is an integral piece of the puzzle of the big accessibility picture. Because if you think about it, like to make sure that your product or your service is can be accessed basically all over the world is in itself accessibility, basically. And by all over the world, we mean that this is like our Eventbrite's global presence. So we have 180 countries where events are created, 46 where we support different currency and payments, and 29 different locales that we support. And to your point, Tucker, when you say that yes, Americans sometimes don't get the chance to get exposed to different cultures. I understand that, but also we don't necessarily either like need to go to a different culture to experience diversity, because diversity, you know, it can be people from you know, like just different religions who are also consider themselves, you know, to be Americans, or different gender identities. There's like so much diversities, and to what you said, people consider diversity in so many different ways that it's like, I don't want to even like put it in a box. There are like so many ways that people express themselves and identify themselves. And so like diversity, like even just like staying in the States, like for example, when I look at Eventbrite audience in the US in itself, only without even going out in other markets, that in itself is super diversified. So I wanted to make sure that the way that we speak to our customers, both in English, so in English-speaking markets and internationally, reflects how you know, how diverse our audience is, so that to make sure that they could feel represented and therefore relate to our product.
Is this something that you just had this idea one day and you took it to your boss and said, "Hey, I want to, you know, Patrick, give me a budget. I need to do this." And then he probably said, "There is no budget because there's never budget, but you can do." How did that come about?
Shout out to Patrick. I know he's
Hi,
watching.
Patrick. I saw you in the audience.
Yeah, kind of, I guess. I had very strong allies in our content design team, and also shout out to them, they're amazing. So there were, I think my first step when I had this idea was to kind of like go and find allies, people who would like share my same vision, and also like brainstorm and see what you know, what their opinion was, and of the initiative, that I thought it was like very valuable for the business. So I kind of like started like looking for you know, little allies to kind of like build my own network and my support. So from just like a friendly chat and a friendly conversation with like-minded people inside the company, this actually started being an actual initiative and an actual like project, because I was able to then bring it to the operational side of what we do. And so basically just by looking at our localization structure, it made sense for us to look at the way that we were translating, to the way that we were creating content, even from the start, from our UX writers, and make sure that it would reflect the way that we wanted to communicate with our customers in an inclusive and accessible way. So the first steps, really, like after I, you know, kind of like gather my little group of friends, then I went to my manager, you know, like give it a nice chat about the project, starting like, you know, putting the pieces together. And then it just made sense that, yes, it was something that made sense for our team, for the infrastructure of localization, for the business, because ultimately, you know, when it builds trust with our users as well. Like when users feel more represented, feel they can relate to our product, ultimately, you know, this builds trust, and therefore also creates a better user experience for them.
Veronica, I'm curious, how was when the initial, obviously, decision was made to go ahead with this, how was the mindset sort of accepted throughout the entire company? So you obviously had the group of friends that were keen on the change, but was it something that was easily implemented throughout the rest of the company and accepted?
I would say yes, because diversity and inclusion is really at the heart of Eventbrite company culture as well. And it was nice then the two things were kind of like went hand in hand, both externally for the business, for our users, but also internally. Like part of, I guess half of, you know, this work was also educating our teams and the way that we speak internally, like in a mindful way amongst each other. I mean, 30% of the company of the people that work at Eventbrite doesn't even speak English as their first language. So for me, making sure that we were communicating also internally in an inclusive and in accessible way was a message that I wanted to get across, within the company first, and then also, mirroring the same thing with our users. And so like diversity and inclusion is one of our, very big principles, and we really foster the type of culture as well internally.
So diversity and inclusion are terms that, I hesitate to use the word buzzwords, but I mean terms that you hear a lot. And I've heard so many different definitions of the terms diversity and inclusion throughout my wanderings on this earth. You have one here from, tell us about this quote.
This is also part of one of our blogs at Eventbrite. You find one of like blogs for creators. The picture is one from one of our events as well. So I think it really gives like a nice idea of what, like diversity is being asked to the party. So being invited at the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. So taking part in whatever is going on, making sure that we, everybody has a voice, not only is represented. So not only you get, the invite to the party, but you always get involved, basically.
I love that. And I'm just noticing the confidential and proprietary watermark on the bottom there. So I hope I'm not breaking any laws. Please, Eventbrite, copyright lawyers, don't come after me for live streaming this.
No, it's on our blog, so it should be all right.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah.
I'm not in hot water. I can't afford a lawyer right now. Let's talk me through the challenge here. Talk us through the challenge here.
Yeah, so like I said, when this became an actual project, the first step was to kind of like start researching what was going on with what were the challenges that like-minded folks in localization in the language industry were facing every day. And the very first one that came to mind is, that was like really evident for me was how do we like translate in an inclusive way languages that are just like grammatically gendered, just by rules, basically. And of 130, the most common spoken language, like you said at the beginning, 55% of them have a gendered grammar, basically. This tends to get even more complicated because then also the grammar of one word also can change depending on the language that we speak. So for example, over here, like sun and moon. So the word sun is feminine in German, but then it's masculine in Spanish. And the word moon is the reverse. So people tend to describe and to perceive the sun and the moon with adjectives and words that stereotypically are associated with either the feminine or the masculine, basically. And this basically just like, I don't even want to get too philosophical here. I just wanted to get you like in the mood to show you that.
Oh, please get philosophical. I love talking about this stuff, especially because English doesn't have good gendered terms, right? The closest I can think of is things like when we talk about like we name boats and ships after feminine names, and there's some things like that we just think of as feminine versus masculine, but we don't have this. So this is really hard to wrap your head around if you only speak a language like English that's not gendered.
Exactly. And that's why I really wanted to get like a practical example across, so that people who only speak English, or like I was talking to a friend who is originally a Swahili speaker. Also in Swahili, there's no gender in the grammar. So it was interesting to, like I was asking him the same question. So, how do you perceive, or how do you describe the sun, for example? And the answer was, it's bright, basically. So because when it's not associated to a gender, you don't associate even like the stereotypical adjectives that you would associate to feminine and masculine. So for example, I don't know, the moon is elegant and it's delicate, which is usually associated with, the feminine perception. What I wanted to say is just that people who speak different languages would pay attention to different things depending on how they perceive the word through the language that they use. We know that the way that languages shape the way that we perceive the word and the way that we live, basically. So yeah, that was like challenge number one.
And that's a really good point. And I just got to say, if this is the type of stuff that you guys in the audience care about, we do have some stuff on nimdzi.com. Does language affect gender equality? Is an old but very, very popular article. We get a lot of traffic to this. And Battle of the Sexes, Gender and Inclusion in the Language Services Industry. I'll go ahead and throw those in the comments when somebody else is talking here. But that's basically the premise of some of the research and writing that we've done here at Nimdzi Insights, which is a lot of times because you say like the sun and the moon, right? Di zona, el sol and la luna, let's just say in Spanish, masculine and feminine. It affects the perception of, or how does having a gendered noun affect the perception of how people actually perceive these different things? And it can get very subconscious, right? And people don't even realize that the perception that they're having.
That's right. It's totally embedded in the way that we think without even, noticing.
Like so much dealing with culture is.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's go back to our presentation here. Andy Ho. Shout out to Andy Ho.
This is a very good example of how gender in our languages, if it's not used in an inclusive way, it can actually lead to very negative impacts, such as gender discrimination altogether. This is the story of a French translator who on LinkedIn advertised herself with the word with the feminine word.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt, can I just read it? Because some people listen to this as a podcast. So
of course.
I want to be inclusive for our podcast listeners out
Absolutely.
there. Question for LinkedIn. Andy Ho writes on LinkedIn. I am a French translator. When the French clients search for translator, quote unquote, on your site, they search for the default masculine term. Your algorithm does not return translators who use the feminine form. So I am left out of the search results. Help. So this is just an example of how algorithms can be less than inclusive. All right, continue, Veronica.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly what it is. I mean, this is a very good example of how if again, us humans can perceive nuances that algorithms can. But also, like I was having this thought earlier, that machines are also easier to educate than humans, which humans tend to, put a bit more resistance than machines. So there's a little bit of a battle over here. So, I mean, I'm sure LinkedIn has fixed this, but this is just an example of how if language is not used in an inclusive way, this person was completely excluded by the job search altogether because she was using the feminine word for translator, which is traductrice, forgive my French, instead of the masculine one, which is what LinkedIn had at a default in their job search, basically. So yeah, my thoughts and researches on this project is in no means in any way to lecture anybody, be provocative in any way, or just like break any rules. All I wanted to do is make sure that we were reducing any negative impact that some words or some terminologies can carry, basically, because this way language is not a bridge, it's definitely a barrier.
Do you find, and Nicole, jump in here because I'll take over a conversation, especially if I find it interesting like this.
True.
But you mentioned your intention isn't to be provocative or to ruffle feathers or anything like that. Is that a challenge when taking on an initiative like this, that can be in some circles kind of charged? I hesitate to use the word political, but it can get political. People have very strong feelings when it comes to language and gender these days. Is that a challenge that you've actually come across?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are, luckily, the majority of the people that I spoke to in regards to this initiative understand the value of it, and that ultimately we're doing the right thing for our users and even beyond our users, because for me it's the right thing to do to make sure that everybody feel included and feel represented. But for example, when we started involving our language service providers, our translators, because at some point of this initiative, we really needed their collaboration. And so as the project was ramping up, we started having a very tight cooperation with our language service providers. And it was such a beautiful moment of sharing, perspectives and expertise. Also, like, again, how the diverse, we are from all different cultures and languages. And with that, it also comes different buy-in to this topic, and also with, different levels of resistance. Are we doing the right thing by the people? Yes, but what about the grammar? And for example, one of the trade-offs
is joining us today. I asked
was
Mercedes, I found
we want to be as inclusive as possible, but we can't compromise readability, because on the other end, by staying as neutral as possible, we also want to make sure that our product is accessible for people maybe with like neurodiversities, or people with different abilities, like listening difficulties, for example, or visual impairments. And that was like the second stage of my research. So when I was looking out there to see what other companies were doing, I started looking at things like special characters that some companies were using to represent all gender identities. And so as I was looking at those, the question was, this is great, it includes all sort of identities, but does it really solve the issue? Does this really like include everybody? Not because one community is louder than other ones, it means that it has more importance. Language equity is to make sure that all languages, and so all identities, all the people who speak different languages are represented and treated equally in the same way. So next to me was this really interesting experiment that was a total breakthrough, where I used an assistive device, basically a screen reader, who basically was reading sentences that would include words with special characters, as if I was a user with a visual impairment, so I couldn't read the screen, I was listening to it, right? It was a very frustrating, poor user experience. The words were breaking, like I couldn't understand, how the words would truncate, and I couldn't understand what actually like I had to do as, or navigate the interface. And so it was just like really clear that, I can't include one group of people and exclude others. Like there has to be some sort of like compromise and trade-off over here. And that was like a real breakthrough, because it also made me think how people, consume content in a very different ways. Not everybody read,
Right.
A lot of people, listen or like use captions, use assistive devices. And for as much as those machines and those tools are amazing, they're not people who can pick up the nuances of
there's some challenges.
Yes, exactly.
And how would you say the impact has been on Eventbrite overall, with this sort of initiative taken on board? I know there's a lot of companies that talk about it and they want to like get started on it, but is there like some measurements that you guys have seen in terms of success or feedback, and kind of what would your advice be to localization teams that are wanting to get started on this, but they're not getting the buy-in?
I know the measurement part is always a bit of a painful point for people in localization.
Or across the board, not just on topics of inclusion.
Yes, of anything. Yes, the painful ROI.
Yeah, that's a whole different podcast. You can come back on next week and we can talk about ROI if you want.
Yeah, so it's funny because I was reading something yesterday that said data are lifeless. So, like my answer would be that if
Data
I
are
could like give a
lifeless.
short answer, like data is completely lifeless, but obviously, that's not how it works. You actually need to, elaborate on that and make sure that, you give, like what you're doing basically has value for the company, and in under all aspects, basically. So, we were, like I said, I was lucky that not only, my manager gave me total support, my team gave me total support, our language service providers, shout out to them if they're also like listening. They were amazing, in their like a super valuable collaboration, and very supportive in this type of work. But also, like I said, Eventbrite culture of diversity and inclusion is very it's very at the heart of what Eventbrite does. It's also like Eventbrite by its core connects people, just by gatherings, basically. So it made sense that if we can foster a better connection, even just by writing better content, translating better content, it made sense. If I can give a piece of advice, would be to try to make sure that this would fall in the infrastructure of your localization operations. So basically, for me, like I was able to bring in this initiative under a wider one that basically saw the update of our glossary, the update of our style guide. And so we did a huge content audit of our product, first in English and then in all our international for our international markets, to make sure that basically we were sounding in and we were like communicating the way that we wanted, that our guidelines, our style guides were representative of our audience, of how diverse our audience was. And so basically just like gather all these amazing ideas, and knowing that, fueling by the fact that that you're doing the right thing for your end users, and also ultimately for the company, because basically, a better user experience would only lead to better business ultimately. And yeah, just like try to be pragmatic and build this in your operations this way. Just make this an integral part of your like quality assurance of the language operations, basically.
And I like that. We're hearing the term user experience more and more and more and more. And I think localization departments are waking up to the fact that they're an integral part of the user experience. And they're shifting the quality model away from traditional quality metrics more towards what is the end user experience and how do we measure that from a global perspective. So before we move on, I wanted to look at a couple of these examples, once again, for the folks that are listening, different ways to represent ungendered language. So I see you using the at symbol, I see you using the asterisk symbol, and I see you using an upside down E symbol in place of the traditional A or O in the Spanish language. So instead of niña or niño, it's at. Right.
Yes. The upside down E is called the schwa.
Schwa. Oh, I like that. That's fun.
Yeah. And and different languages. These are like 3 examples: one in Spanish, one in Italian, and one in French. And basically it was part of my research to see how people in the digital world were using these special characters to include all identities, gender identities in this case. Like, to be honest with you, not even all keyboards have the schwa, so that in itself is not accessible to everybody.
Right. And I'm going to take a second to plug something else here. A while back, I talked to an early Nimdzi Live episode. I talked to Mercedes. I don't remember. I think it was La Montaña. Mercedes La Montaña, about gender-free communication, and she was a translator, Spanish translator. And we talked about a lot of these, like which is the correct, which is the best. And from a translator point of view, or an LSP point of view, you really need to follow the style guide of our client. Like our job on the vendor side wouldn't be to say this, no, we can't do it this way, or we need to do it that way. Is to follow the style from your clients. So I just wanted to push that really quick. And of course, I have landscapers coming, so there goes my audio quality. Let's keep going here and get rid of this. Let's keep going here. The switch
Yeah.
into action here. Talk us through.
Yeah, so basically the switch was like, how do we, like really like changing the mindset of how we then apply all these like amazing principles of language equity and accessibility to our everyday operations. And like I said, one of like for me, like this whole project laid in like 3 main stages. One was the updating our localization documentations and resources, of which, like you just said, the style guide was like the main piece, basically. And make sure that all those guidelines are up to date. They have a customized section for each one of the languages that you translate and you localize, that includes all the nuances and all the cultural aspect of a specific language. To give an example, just not to be stereotypical here, but our French translator was one of the ones that was a bit more, not reluctant, but brought in some examples that we relied on her expertise, saying, this just, there's so many ways that we can like go around this, or like just manipulate the source text rather than completely just like not follow the grammar, for example, of the masculine in this case. So one of the shifts here that really helped us was giving our language service providers, our linguists, total trust and freedom also to for them to express their expertise and their value, and that's when we started really considering how, for this specific project, transcreating serves us better than actual translating when it comes to like linguistic challenges for like the ones related to the gender grammar, for example. So just to give you like a very practical instance, we moved on from are you sure you want to purchase this ticket, for example, to confirm that you want to buy this ticket. Because are you sure in languages like Italian, Spanish, like come with sei sicura, which is like it carries a gender with itself already. By using the word confirm, you're basically asking the same question, but you're like going around the big question altogether, and you're staying as neutral as possible. You're not excluding anybody. Your readability is not compromised. So where possible, we are giving the freedom to our translators to be creative and use transcreation principles rather than translation, than translating, basically. Another example is welcome to Eventbrite, which is benvenido or benvenida, for example. And we were creative with it a little bit, and we turn into we welcome you, basically.
Did you guys use internal team members like the linguists and the translators for overall the languages, or was there times that you had to get like external research to kind of make sure you're using the correct grammar?
We worked with our language service providers, with our LSPs. Okay. So I know I can mention them if that's okay.
Shout them out.
To give a big thank you to Alpha CRC and Ambabo for their help and their huge value on this project.
Nice. Yeah, this is definitely something where you need a strong partnership with your providers on this. It's not something that you can just be driving all by yourself.
It was such a huge cross-functional project, Tucker, like amazing, like from the content creators, the product leads, us localization, the language, the linguists and the translators. It was like a huge, and that, to be honest with you, that's what I really enjoyed, the human aspect of this, which it, in itself was like seeing all these principles at work. So it was really, really nice.
Yeah, just looking at some of the examples here, so you had first job, update the style guides. And for
Yeah.
those that are following along, I have a style guide up on screen here, and I like this. So the table of contents for the style guide: Eventbrite's voice and tone, audience, principles of good UX writing, accessibility, calls to actions, error messages, inclusive language, and German style guide. So it's just a matter of updating your style guide to include aspects of inclusive language and probably making some updates to the accessibility section as well.
Yeah, so basically the top part of the content table are all guidelines that can be applicable to all languages. So they're like this general knowledge for content creators and our translators. And at the bottom of each one of those style guides, I have added a customized section for each one of the languages. The blueprint was just like my researches and the way that we were translating and the documentation that we had. And then I extended it over to our language service providers, and they added a lot more value and like cultural nuances that I wasn't aware of. And that's when you need the people who speak the language, who hold its knowledge to help you with that.
And then you talked about the content audit of non-English domains. Anytime I hear a word audit, Nimdzi does audits of localization programs, and it's horrible branding because nobody likes an audit, right? So we need to change the name of that. But
we do.
we definitely do. But audits can be very useful about uncovering what needs to be changed. So walk us through the audit process quickly.
Yeah. So basically, once we were happy with the style guides, and like we laid the way that we wanted to communicate, and we updated that, we wanted to make sure that like we hit the ground running. We went to our product and looked at try to identify ways that didn't sound so inclusive and that could have been translated in a better way, or even like edited at the source, from our content designers, from our content writers. And to give you an example, we were using words like disabled waitlist or able or disabled waitlist. So my point was, can we use activate and deactivate the waitlist? Like the meaning of it is the same, the functionality is the same, but it doesn't carry an emotional connotation that some people may find difficult, So it's such a small change, but it can make a world of a difference to some people out there.
Yeah, it's a small change. I remember, especially, there was a big movement. You see that this movement comes, it's just good practices, one could argue, but every once in a while, this movement comes up to change language, whether it's actual language used on websites or whatever, or even in like the source code of different things. And I remember a few years ago at Nimdzi, we have this group that discusses geocultural and geopolitical stuff. Reach out if you want more information about that, guys in the audience. But back when the BLM movements really was just starting, there was this big push to go in and change a bunch of language. And I don't have the slides prepared, but if you're interested in the audience, reach out and we can get you some examples of that. But it's really interesting, removing things like white hat and black hat, right? Just taking out these words that, or master and slave is another big one in code. Right?
Yeah. When I found that one out, I was like, who even does use these languages? Like
from a different time, different era.
Yeah, or like blacklisting.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. And there's some better examples, but I'd have to look them up. So creative localization, I think we've kind of talked about the need to get creative here. I want to get into the results. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock here.
Yeah, sure.
So the results.
Yeah, so like I was, briefly mentioning earlier, it's difficult to measure, like these projects in data. But when you get like such positive feedback from your partners, your translators, that they now can rely on a very solid documentation, very supportive guidelines to face, like cultural and linguistical challenges that we've never faced before. That in itself is a positive result. That in itself tells you that you did a good job, that all these now mean that your infrastructure is up to date. It reflects the way that you want to communicate with your users globally, that your partners, your linguists feel supported, and these ultimately results to better translations. Better translation make your product more accessible all over the world, and that's what we want basically.
And better translations means better user experience.
There you go.
Right. I shouldn't have to point that out. Like, that should be self-evident. But like I said, I think a lot of localization folks are still kind of getting used to that, oh yeah, localization is probably the number one thing impacting our global user experience. Well, maybe not the number one. I mean, UI and stuff. But, it's up there. It's up there.
Yeah, but like UI and localization, at least at Eventbrite, we have a very, very tight connection. Like, we are always, like exchanging ideas, and they ask, is this like localization friendly for you guys? When they come, like when they are writing a new string, or they coming up with a new page design. So this type of education also, like I said earlier, just goes internally. Like, just as much as we want to make sure that people outside in the world that use Eventbrite is aware of these guidelines. Also, the people that you work with internally need to be aware of these guidelines. So make sure that once you have them, educate, spread the words, spread your gospel internally.
Evangelize, preach it.
Yeah. That's why I created this presentation in the first place.
So this looks like a quote. The movement towards inclusive language. I'll read it for everybody. Large companies are feeling the need to become more inclusive and driving a shift in business as they change their actions. Tech companies like Zoom, Slack, Eventbrite, and more have addressed diversity and inclusion metrics to their language vendor selection and renewal process. Clients of these big companies have started asking for inclusive adaptations of their past and current content. Where's this quote from?
Argos Multilingual. I found this just by accident, to be honest. And I guess the word was spread outside of Eventbrite, even like without me knowing, because we got a mention over here. And then again, if this was a number, it would have been a very, very positive, one. Just by being recognized as one of the leaders of these like inclusive and language equity movement in itself, is a great success for me.
Yeah, and I have a quote to that, or I have a link to that blog from Argos Multilingual, by the way, guys, in the description of this event. And I'll see if I can put it.
And thank you for whoever wrote this. Thank you to the author.
Yeah, I had it queued up, but I accidentally closed it. Whoops. I have too many buttons I'm pressing here. So, the future, people's first language.
Yeah, at the end of it, it's all down to that. And every person who is involved in the process of creating digital content has a role to play in its accessibility. And this ultimately will make our product easier and to use for everyone. I mean, think of the accessibility features that even your phone has. These were created for accessibility purposes, like I said, to make sure that people with like different abilities would be able to use the phone. But how many times maybe you're in a crowded place and you end up reading the captions instead of listening to a video? Or
all the time. All the time. Like, I always have captions on for everything because I've got 3 kids that are loud and I can't hear anything. So it's nice to have those captions on.
I got 2 of those as well, trust me. And or for example, another really good one was I can't remember what functionality it was, but this woman was using her phone with like only one hand because she was breastfeeding her baby, so she could only use her hand.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so basically, ultimately, all these accessibility features benefit everyone. You start developing them from one a targeted audience, but then everybody benefit from them. And so like I said, as much as like diversity and inclusion are part of the localization DNA, it's really important that every person who is involved, every team who is involved in creating digital content and products are have a role to play, and so is aware of this. And we recognize that this is, it comes with responsibilities towards our users, but also it comes with an opportunity to spread, these principles and raise awareness in the way that we speak every day. And to stay committed to creating a product and a culture that is inclusive of all identities by using language that represent and honors our vast and diverse communities and creators all over the world, basically.
And on screen here, for final slide in your deck, can you describe this? Most people have seen some version of this before.
Yeah, so this is kind of like my picture, my vision of language equity. So as our product evolves, the way that we communicate with our users also need to evolve. And there's this amazing quote that says, culture can't evolve as fast as the language, or faster than the language. Language is the one that leads the way always. It's the flash, it's the lightning, the flash that's faster. So if we start being more mindful of the way that we speak, of the way that we communicate with each other, and like I said, internally and with our users, then ultimately, like I said, the culture will also evolve, and for the positive, for the right way. And so language equity acknowledges diversity, conveys respect to all people. It is sensitive to differences and promotes equitable communication. And language is about human connection. We know that, and we want to make this in the most equitable way possible.
Very good. There's your dog.
Sorry.
Oh, it's
At least it's
Nikoli's
not a
dog.
lamb this time. Yeah.
Nikoli, any questions while I try to load up some chats here?
No, I just thought, I think one thing that stood out for me specifically was also the fact that you guys have prioritized the inclusivity internally throughout the company, because I think that's something that would then sort of, filter through from what the team has to the actual users. So I think that would be a good starting point for other companies as well. Yeah,
like we communicate, we translate, we localize some of our internal communications. We, when there are big company meetings, one of the suggestions was have the captions, or have maybe like subtitles for people who are not English speakers, for those big company announcements. For example, just like little tweaks like that, it makes
exactly
a difference.
You should write a guide for everybody to make some points.
I don't want to. No, I don't
want that responsibility.
To share my experience. I don't mean to lecture anybody. I just want to, if what I've learned and what I've, the results of my research can help anybody, I'm more than happy to share them. But I don't want to write anything for this is
Let's go over. If you can clarify what ICU messages, we can get that. I also saw a question about what camera I'm using. Random question, but I'll answer it. It's a DSLR camera running through a bunch of expensive equipment. Ugh. So it's kind of a pain, but I think it's a Sony Alpha something. ping me.
Well, you look really good,
Well,
compared to us too. So
Thank
you're
you.
definitely a pro.
I'm running
here.
through a lot of filters on this. I got it. Some of us need it more than others here. So awesome. Any final thoughts as we're wrapping up today? Veronica, I'll turn it to you. Final thoughts, closing arguments.
I just want to, maybe just leave you with a quote that I was reading again earlier that said, healing the world through our words. So that was nice. It really stuck with me. So healing the world to using kinder words. So if I can leave you with a message, that would be it.
Healing the world through kinder words. That's really what we do. Right? In the local, just step into the mantle, guys. If you're working in language services, then you are working in accessibility, inclusion, and all of that stuff. So take it on. And Veronica, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, I will close this out here. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Whether you are joining us live or watching the recording afterwards, please also join me in thanking our panelists, our guests, Miss DiMartino here, as well as Miss Poltriter. My colleague Nikoli, as well, who made time to share their experience with us. Make sure to go follow them on LinkedIn, stay up to date with what they are doing. As we are finishing up, if you haven't already done so, make sure that you're checking out Nimdzi's LinkedIn page for upcoming events. We have an interesting event coming up on April 19th with Jonas Reiberg and Wei Zhang from Scientific. We're talking about doing more with less, reducing localization costs during economic downturns. It's a very, very timely topic, and we've got two people that have helped a lot of companies figure out how to maximize their localization budget. So go check that out and sign up. You can sign up today. It's already up there. And lastly, if you'd like more information about how to power your localization department in 2023, I encourage you to check out all of the resources available at nimdzi.com. We have lots of different case studies that you can learn from, how different companies do it. We have information on how to run those assessments, what I previously called audits, whether it's in regards to technology, whether it's in regard to process, or whether it's in regard to things like diversity and inclusion, as well as training to help level up your teams. Lots of resources available from nimdzi.com. Go check it out. Once again, my name is Tucker Johnson, and it has been my pleasure to be your host along with my colleague Nikoli today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.